interacting with people.
Good to go, Kelly.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Okay. Yep. No. Thank you. Thanks. Welcome everyone to our Monday, March 1st meeting of the council. This is our caucus prior to our main meeting. For the record, I'll just run through who's here. From the council, Mr. Ballerin, Mr. O'Brien, Council President Ellis, Mr. Hoey, Mr. Igo, Ms. Farrell, Ms. Frederick, Mr. O'Shea, Mr. Conti, Miss Love. Did I get you, Mr. Ballerin? I did, right? Okay. Who's coming in? Mr. Johnson is here. Staff, Research Council, Mr. Pichardo, City Clerk and Council Clerk Danielle Gillespie is also with us. Did I miss? Oh, and Mr. Brett Williams, Corp Counsel, is also with us.
And Ms. Fahey just joined us.
Okay, along with Ms. Fahey. Okay. All right. So yeah, I'll just get right into the agenda for approval of minutes. We have the February 18th meeting minutes for approval. February 18th of 21. And next, on to local laws introduced. Local Law C of 2021 by Mr. O'Shea regarding the use of chemical weapons will be a referral to the Public Safety Committee. Okay. Next, on to local laws held. Number 2 by well, it's by most of us, but local law J. It's came out of public safety with a positive recommendation. It's aged, so we're ready to pass it. So we'll be voting on that this evening. Did you want to add anything to that, Richard? Okay, good. All right, that's number 2 under local laws held. Next, on to under local laws held, number 4. Also, Mr. Conti and a few other members, local law M, number 4 of 2020. We'll be voting on that also this evening. Local law M of 2020. So that's it for the local laws. Next, on to ordinances introduced. We got 4/31/21 by Mr. O'Brien for the General Services Committee. It'll be a referral to General Services Committee. It's in relation to the city's use or requirement to use lead pipes. Okay. Next, on ordinances held, it's number 9. Mr. Conti again will be it's ordinance number 219220 as amended. We'll be voting on that also. Do you want to say anything about that, Mr. Conti?
No, I mean, we discussed
The
this.
company,
Again, historic district demo 1, the previous local laws.
the
Also
company is, yes,
historic district demos.
thank you. Okay, next on to resolutions introduced. 22/31/21R by Ms. Farrell on behalf of Finance. That'll be a referral to the Finance. That's 22/31/21. Next, another by Ms. Farrell for Finance is 23/31/21. What happened to my screen here? Okay, there you all go. That'll be a referral to Finance also. That's 23/31/21R. Excuse me. Next, it's 24/31/21R by council members Love and Robinson. With all of us as co-sponsors. It's a resolution honoring the life and legacy of Victor Kane. we're all listed as co-sponsors on that. That's 2431, 21R. Okay. Okay, next, another finance by Ms. Farrell for finance. 2531, 21R. That'll be a referral to finance. Okay. Okay, next resolution introduced is mine. It's in relation to Executive Order 203 regarding the police collaborative and the police reforms. That's 2631, 21R. It'll be introduced and I'll refer to public safety. It's 26. Next intros 2731, 21R. It's by myself, Mr. Robinson, and Miss Love. It's a resolution honoring the life of Warren Mackey and renaming a portion of Livingston Avenue in his honor. Is Mr. Robinson in with us now? The last time I kind of skipped by and didn't give him a chance to speak on it, but I don't see him. So that'll be a pass. We're all, again, listed as co-sponsors on that one. Okay.
You're prime sponsor of that, Mr. Kimbrough, right?
Myself, Love, Miss Love, and Mr. Robinson.
Okay. Okay. No problem.
Danielle has her hand up.
Is it going to committee?
That, yes, general service. It's going to,
Okay.
because it's a street renaming. Of course, I said that on Wednesday, but not today. Yeah, because of the street renaming, it's going to the general service committee. Okay, and then next would be the MC by Mr. Conti. It's 2831, 21R. Mr. Conti, you want to speak on it, or?
This is, and I think we talked about it last time. This is just commemorating the 50th anniversary of the first statewide march on Albany, the statewide march on the state capitol, which happened to be in Albany, for gay and lesbian civil rights. And so that the actual anniversary is March 14th of this year, in a couple of weeks.
And all members, co-sponsors? Show of hands. Yes, yes. Okay, thank you. It looks like everyone. Okay. And nothing outstanding. That was the last thing I had on the agenda. Got some time to talk. So what I'll just, I guess, open the floor. Is anyone? Well, actually, you know what? We gotten a request from Mr. Anani to have the Shot Spotter folks come in and do a presentation and talk to us about their technology. It appears they've met with the chief and the county legislators and a few other groups. And I was we're going back and forth in leadership with the idea of having them come to caucus. I mentioned caucus initially, but just based on advice from Mr. Pichardo and a little bit of history from Mr. Conti, it's probably better not to set that precedent. So we're going to have the representatives from ShotSpotter reach out to members with a time for us to meet and listen to what they have to say about their technology. The thing is, with all the violence we have going on in the city, it really it'd be one more tool if the administration and the police chief decides to take it on, one more tool to help us in dealing with this gun violence. So we're gonna wait to hear from ShotSpotter folks to set up a meeting for us to attend.
I think they're waiting to hear from you.
The ShotSpotter folks, you said you
Yes.
met with her today. She's
Yeah,
waiting
actually,
for-
I met with them today. And I think Violet mentioned, Danielle, that she'd be in touch with you. And I thought that, I know that email was going around. I thought that there was some effort to coordinate or to identify members who might be interested in a date. And, my suggestion would be then to pass that information,
long term.
that date on
Yeah.
to Violet so she can extend the invite. And so it would be a briefing from them as opposed to the council.
Right. So no, we haven't gotten there yet. We've been kind of
Yeah.
having that conversation amongst ourselves. We'll get that out to members to work on getting that set up.
Yep.
Mr. O'Brien.
Yeah, Danielle sent us a note noting that they got one response to the RFP for equipping the council chamber and I believe the caucus room with audiovisual equipment. And Zach Simpson reviewed it. He's a member of the PEG Access Board. He said the only thing missing that he noted was a microphone stand and a screen. So I'm assuming that they could be easily added on. Maybe there's enough Time Warner money. I know there was like 6 figures of Time Warner money, but that seems to be a small item that could just be added on to it. And then I guess, Danielle, it goes to the PEG board to accept. Is that the process?
So PEC is going to review the proposal probably at their next meeting. Another thing that the council can do is invite the submitter to come in and you can ask questions to the submitter of items that is in that RFP that he provided when it closed on February 25th. So that's an option.
I think that's a
Right,
good
which,
option.
yeah, that's the conversation that I've been having with Danielle around maybe having that person come in and lay out some of the options. Not that we all understand this stuff and whatnot, but I figure maybe you all would want to hear from the bidder. It's unfortunate. Well, the first time around we didn't get any bidders, and the second
Yeah.
time around
Mhm.
we've gotten the one. So, and we really need to get going on this. Not that I want to rush into this, but we before long we'll be back in the chambers, and it'd be nice to have it all modernized and be able to communicate like some of the other bodies that I watch their council meetings, and I mean the technology's out there, and we really need to take advantage of it.
Also would
as soon
allow
as
us to come back in earlier potentially, because one of the big issues is public comment. So if this was something where we could still do remote public comment in a way, so it'd just be council members in the chamber. I mean, I think it would open a lot of different possibilities on getting back in there.
And I may owe everyone an apology because I don't know if I sent the RFP to the entire council body yet, but I will be working on that and I'll try and get that out tonight if I have not.
And to our council members, I like this. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Judy.
So my reaction to this is I could look at it all I want, and I'm not going to be able to tell whatever. I've been working hard this weekend on getting my husband having a tablet and all set up, and it just takes an enormous amount of time for some of us to do this kind of stuff. So I'm good with finance and USDO and the law. I'm not good with this technology stuff, and I would I encourage those of you who have knowledge about this to take the deeper dive and advise the rest of us. That's what I would like.
Since we got some time, I really wanted to talk to council members. I talked to leadership about this. But I really want council members to start thinking about what we look as staff for this council and for the next council and next council. What I've seen over the last 3 years is that council members are becoming more legislative body, different than, probably councils in the past. And so we are at a point where we need more staff to be better legislators. And so what I'd like is council members to really start submitting to myself or leadership what your view on of what type of staff members we would need, because we have to start letting this administration know that they have to start thinking about the council as a real legislative body and the staffing needs that we're going to need to move forward. I look at it as it's the honor to really look at it and say we need more staff, because that means council members are becoming more legislators, right? They're doing their homework, they're doing the work, and they want to be legislators. So we're going to need the staff. Our staff is already overburdened, a wonderful job they do, but we're going to need more of those resources. And I'd like council members to really start bringing those issues and ideas to me through email, so we can have those discussions around our budget, so we can have those discussions around this money that's coming through. We always see job title changes for salaries. That's all good, but we need to really start making our case and putting this forward in the next budget about the need, what our needs for is to become better legislators, make them more efficient legislators moving forward.
Just a reminder, that is a conversation that we did start during budget. So getting more of that information would be very helpful.
Yeah, Judy.
I will say, for starters, especially looking at some of the members that will not be back next year, we definitely need somebody on finance, because we're going to miss Judy and all her attention to detail that she does. So financial analyst will be a good position, to brief us about budget and just moving forward. So, and also losing Mike O'Brien, someone that I've worked with. I remember my first year combing through the budget. So just want to thank you too. And all I can think of is someone in the finance, with a finance background. Thank you.
Yeah, I would agree in terms of someone, it could even be a part-time position, a budget analyst of some sort, because they're particularly needed during certain parts of the year. And I think I also had raised issues in the past about, a part-time administrative assistant. Thinking back to Michelle, because that would have relieved her of some of the administrative tasks that are very time consuming, that could be delegated under her supervision, under that person's supervision, to kind of an administrative assistant in terms of, pulling agendas together, coordinating meetings, things of that nature. And that could be a part-time position also, but and that would allow someone to focus more on policy and analysis and things of that nature. But we do need, research capacity is important. That's what, in terms of thinking of areas, research capacity is an important area to think about.
And I was just going to comment that it doesn't necessarily, we can also think of paid internships, connecting with SUNY, that master's program they have maybe, or even undergraduate, but.
Yeah, Rockefeller, I think, also has sometimes had a intern program if they've, might be another resource to use as well.
It really is an incredible place to learn about local government.
But one thing, my experience, when you bring interns in, and that was also my experience when in the legislature and in the office I worked in, you really have to be able to use them in a meaningful way and give them a meaningful experience. Sometimes it's not as easy as you think.
Thanks, Richard. Judy, you want to say something?
Yes, I do think the council would also benefit from somebody like a parliamentarian that is, familiar with the rules, to make sure that the process is followed. That is something that Richard has been doing, and we all rely on him to do that. And I think that things can fall apart very quickly if you don't have somebody who is very focused on that, and having somebody consult with the leadership and preparation for a meeting about the procedures, or attending caucus and or just attending caucus and attending a meeting to assist with that kind of thing is very important function. I do want to mention as an aside that it looks like we can expect the stimulus bill, the COVID relief bill, to pass by the middle of March. And I do hope that very early on, we're going to know, I expect that very early on, we're going to know how much money the city of Albany can reasonably expect to get out of that. And I think that the leadership needs to be having conversations with the mayor's office about them not making commitments with that money without the Common Council being very strongly involved in that. I expect that it will make us whole for this year. We've been nervous about a budget gap, but I also think that there will be an opportunity to replenish some of our reserves, and I think that we need to be cautious about making spending decisions maybe a little bit too quickly for what funding might be there. My guess is that it's going to be very welcomed relief for the city, and I am a little bit concerned about everybody having ideas about what to do with that money, and we need to recognize the challenges still ahead of us, the potential for additional challenges like this or other challenges, etc. And I know that the mayor will probably, if I'm right in my supposition, and from some of my conversations that I had with Senator Schumer's office a few months ago, that it's likely that there will be some room for some property tax relief, as the mayor had wanted to occur this year, but then couldn't because of this very significant drop in sales tax for us. So, but I want to encourage the leadership to get us in the trenches involved in those discussions as soon as possible.
So Judy, we did talk about that in leadership, and just to let everyone know, I'm sorry, my dog is telling my son he's a dog. But that will be part of the conversation at the finance committee meeting. They can't make any definitive because they don't know that they have the money yet. So there's not necessarily any commitments there, but it's to start the planning. And it was something we talked about in leadership and we'll continue to talk about. So I appreciate you bringing it up.
I want to say that I hope that we have full access to information before, with regard to what money, before it is leaked to the press and there's conversations with the press and the public about it.
Thank you,
Right,
Ms.
and-
Farrell.
Yeah.
She's being very dramatic about it. Ms. Farrell has been on this like nobody's business. So this is not, what you said, Judy, is apropos, but Ms. Farrell's being very modest about it. She's been on this as finance chair about not making any moves. We want to hear it. So Judy, what you said, the finance chair has been on it.
But I will say,
From
I
day one.
appreciate you repeating it because we also can't make any, I mean, I know that you said the same thing when you were finance chair and that didn't always happen. So thank you. And thank you, Corey, and President Allen.
Yeah, no, it was good. Just sitting here listening to you, Judy, I would swear you were either in that meeting with us or you had Jenny's notes, because you were like almost saying word for word,
Yes,
you know, what her request to, you know, as a part of our meeting. So
that's exactly.
so thank you. So yeah.
I'm trying to learn from Judy. Thank goodness I have another year left.
Mr. Robinson is also with us. I don't know if I mentioned you earlier. Did anyone else come in that? No? Okay. So yeah, it was good. It's good.
Can I ask how many public comments we have? I haven't seen any.
It's because we only have one person that wants to speak live during tonight's meeting at 7. And then there was one person that submitted a written comment, but it wasn't specific to this meeting. It was just about an experience that they had, which was shared with the council and then the appropriate department so that they could resolve it. There's some things in there about a trip and fall and an injury that may not be appropriate to share during the meeting. So
Thank you.
Okay.
As long as we have a moment, I want to make sure everybody's aware of the fact that we noticed a glitch in our calendar with regard to the next caucus appeared as being March 24th, and instead it's March 31st. And that was when we had a Housing and Community Development Committee meeting scheduled. So rather than doubling up, because we never know what is going to be brought up in caucus or what kind of presentations we might have, we're going to take advantage of the April 7th date. And I've asked Danielle just to check with committee members to make sure that people are still available for that particular date, and then to have a backup date of April 15th. So if people could let Danielle know, look at your calendars if you're on that committee. We would like to go ahead and post those revised notices.
can I ask a quick question? And I don't know if this has been tried before. Can I send out a calendar invite for the date and the time, and then based on the people that respond, as opposed to an email that may be helpful?
Yes, I have no problem with that.
Yeah, it's easier. I don't know that people are used to it, but yeah, it adds it to your
Except-
calendar if you accept it. But
Would you be doing, so Outlook calendar and Google calendar don't cooperate with each other. So would you be doing a Google invite or an Outlook invite?
I'll do it on Google. I'm sorry, I'll do it on Outlook, but then I also put the meeting and the accompanying attachments on the Google Calendar. Would that work?
I don't know how to access the Google Calendar or the Google documents that we have. So if you send out an email with the date and the Google information, I'll reply to the email. I'm not very tech savvy myself, so I don't want to miss a meeting or a date.
I'm with Alfredo.
You can try. I mean, I have issues with Outlook calendar. I don't love it, but I can certainly cooperate with you in any way that you'd like.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
April 7 is okay with me, by the way.
Right. It's now 7:01.
Thank you. So now we got that. It is now 7 o'clock. We will welcome, let's begin the March 1st, 2021 Albany Common Council meeting. Can the clerk please call the roll?
Yes, Mr. President, if all members can unmute themselves so that they're able to respond to their names. Anani,
Present.
Valorant,
Here.
Conti,
Present.
Dochette,
Here,
Fahey,
Here,
Farrell,
Here,
Flynn, Frederick,
here,
Hoey,
Here.
Igo,
Here.
Johnson,
Here.
Kimbrough,
Here,
Love,
here,
O'Brien,
Here.
Robinson.
Here.
Fourteen members present, one absent.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, can you put up the flags so we do the pledge of allegiance, and then after that, we'll have a moment of silence. Pledge allegiance to the flag,
United States of America.
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible,
Indivisible,
with liberty
liberty,
and justice for all. Thank you. And now we'll move on to item on our agenda, our public comment period. Madam, during a public comment period, the public can talk about any subject they wish to talk about. You have 5 minutes to comment. At that time, council members cannot answer your questions, or at that time, if they choose to do so, they will respond to your public comment at a later time in the agenda. Anybody doing public comment, we ask that you state your name and your address for the record. And at 4 minutes point of the public comment, I will tell you have 1 minute remaining. And after the 5 minute mark, I will ask you to please conclude your remarks. So with that being said, Madam Clerk, do we have anyone signed up for public comment period?
Yes, Mr. President, we have Nairobi Vives with us.
Oh, there she is.
Hi, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening. I will keep my comments short. My name is Nairobi Vives. My address is 3 White Oak Lane, Albany, New York. I am speaking on Local Law J, and I am the chair of the CPRB. I would just like to take this opportunity to thank the sponsors of the legislation, to thank the members of the Public Safety Committee, and to thank the staff of the Common Council for all of your hard work on Local Law J. As you all know, myself and the other members of the board have been pushing for Local Law J throughout the process, and we are happy that it's being voted on tonight. We urge the full Common Council to vote to pass Local Law J, and we as the board and the community have said throughout the process that we are looking for a truly independent board that has the power to effectively review complaints and to hold APD accountable when necessary. We are happy, and we think that Local Law J would bring those wishes to fruition. We also would like to, as you all know, we are a very active board, and we continue to think of ways to better the board and to better serve the community. So we ask that you be open to future changes and proposals from the board to do so. We thank you, and again, we urge all of you to pass this important measure. Thank you.
Corey, you're muted.
Oh, thank you so much. Madam Clerk, can you call the next speaker?
I don't see anyone else. And Ms. Vives was the only one that signed up to speak.
And we don't have any written in comments? Okay. Well, no one waiting in the queue and no written comments. At this time, we will deem public comment period closed for March 1st, 2021. And we'll move on to approval of minutes. Mr. Kimbrough.
Thank you, Mr. President. I offer the meeting minutes for our February 18th of 2021 minutes for passage.
Is there a second on that?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Raise of hands, majority, thank you. No one opposed. Approval of minutes passes. Now, continuing on our agenda, we're going to local laws introduced. Got to get out my notes. I lost my notes. Local law introduced, Ms. Duche.
Thank you, Mr. President. I notice local law, did you say J? It's local law C of
C.
2021.
Oh, C, sorry. Sorry.
Local law C of 2021 for introduction.
Can the clerk please read the local law?
A local law amending Article 7B, Albany Police Department interactions of Part 1, Department of Police of Chapter 42, Departments and Commissions of Part 1, Administrative Legislation of the Albany City Code with regard to the use of chemical weapons and kinetic energy munitions on civilian populations.
Mr. Kimbrough.
Thank you, Mr. President. There'll be a referral to the Public Safety Committee.
Thank you.
I
Mr.
believe
President,
Councilwoman Doshett has her hand raised.
I didn't see your hands. Go ahead.
yeah, so I just want to comment on this briefly. I know it is going to committee, but I feel very strongly about this legislation. I've been very upset that it seems as though tear gas is being used predominantly on people of color in residential neighborhoods where predominantly people of color live. And I don't think that that's an accident. I think that sometimes people think a little differently about what they're doing when it affects certain populations. And I think it's time that we change the dynamic and we say enough is enough, and we need to figure out a different way of doing things. There's been some discussion about just prohibiting tear gas in residential areas where, in residential areas. And the question I have is, if we can figure out other means for controlling people, getting control over a situation, maybe through de-escalation as opposed to escalation in those kinds of areas, then why don't we use those kinds of tactics wherever this might occur? I think that both the police and the public will benefit from us saying we need to figure out a different way of doing things and banning the use of these kinds of weapons in an attempt to control people. We want a safe and productive conversation between the police and members of the public, and that will benefit both the police and the public. So I am hoping that, I know some people have reservations about this. I'm hoping that people have an open mind to this as we move this into committee discussions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Duche. Now continuing on with local laws held, Mr. Conti.
Thank you, Mr. President. I notice local law J of 2020 as amended, request passage and a roll call vote thereon.
Thank you. Can the clerk please read the law?
A local law amending Article 44, General Provisions of Part 33, Community Police Review Board of Chapter 42, Departments and Commissions of Part 1 of the Code of the City of Albany in relation to the operation of the CPRB.
Discussion on the local law, Mr. Conti?
Thank you, Mr. President. So, you know, this isn't the first time we've had a discussion in terms of establishing a strong review board. Actually, back in 1999, 2000, before the current board was established, there was a community relations board, and I stress the term, it was a relations board, which is what localities did back then when there was a problem. It was meant to create better relations as opposed to a stronger review board to look at inappropriate actions and review discipline. But the discussion we had back in 99, 2000, some of the same issues that we're having, discussions that we're having today, were ones that were had back then. But at the time, there wasn't a consensus to move forward on what could have been a stronger review board than was established in 2000. Even so, the 2000 board was considered a model at the time, and there were a lot of positive attributes to it. But I do want to also acknowledge some of the members who were advocates and proponents of a strong review board back then, including our former colleagues, Carolyn McLaughlin, Sarah Curry Cobb, and Shirley Foskey. At that time, the mayor appointed a task force, which included those members. I was also a member of that task force, and the current board was developed. But we've come a long way since then, and so the review board that is embodied in this legislation before us tonight is a significant step forward from where we were in 2000. Embodies issues we discussed back in 2000, but we're ready to move forward on. And while I would say we all would wish that the circumstances that brought us here weren't what they were, we are now at that point of really putting together a stronger board. I'm just going to quickly run down some of the revisions that this local law would make to the current practice. One, it does open up the role that is currently occupied by the Government Law Center. So that administrative role that they have will no longer be tied in the statute to the Government Law Center, but will be opened up to a competitive process that will be issued periodically, which could be the Government Law Center, but will open it up to other entities that might have the ability to carry out that role. And that process, that RFQ process, will be done in conjunction, in cooperation with members of the CPRB and the council. So there would be involvement in there as well. It would provide the CPRB with a stable budget, which would be a minimum of 1% of the Albany Police Department's budget, which in current dollars could be in the area of $540,000. It could be more than that, but that would be the floor that they know they could work with. It provides the CPRB the ability to hire staff, including their own counsel. It provides independent investigatory authority and powers, including subpoena authority, and also allows the CPRB to undertake investigations even in the absence of a formal complaint. It also provides the CPRB the right to make findings and to make disciplinary determinations, which is important. It improves language access to CPRB materials and the whole process, so that language will not be a barrier. It expands the CPRB's access to information and records, and we tried to put some provisions in there as well, that if there are impediments or barriers, we can work through that, and the council can be assistance to make sure that, you know, they're not stonewalled, shall we say. And there are other provisions in there, but I think those are some of the highlights that are included. And, you know, through this process, we were guided by the public comment we received through the Public Safety Committee in those discussions, as well as the numerous recommendations that we received from the CPRB itself, and attempted to accommodate and incorporate those recommendations into the proposal. So it comes, you know, a long way from what we did in 2000 to what we're about to embark on tonight in terms of moving forward. And I want to also, you know, acknowledge the work of the Public Safety Committee, the many members who participated in this process for their recommendations and their contributions to this whole process. There's still more work to be done. I also want to acknowledge our research council for the work he did. JR was really helpful in terms of some of the research, in terms of how other communities deal with this, reaching out to other communities such as Rochester, working with the Government Law Center, drafting some of the amendments and helping, working on the revisions, et cetera. And he really dug into it, you might say, and got into it. And I do want to express appreciation to JR for all the work that he did. He was very helpful and valuable in terms of moving this forward. As I say, tonight we're going to take a giant step forward. It's not the end of the discussion. Obviously, we have the police collaborative reforms to discuss, which will begin that, I guess, tomorrow night. But this is a significant part of the process moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Conti. Any further discussion? Ms. Duche?
Thank you. I just want to thank both Richard and JR and also the Public Safety Committee for all your work on this. I was glad to see some improvements put forward, but I didn't feel comfortable being a co-sponsor because I didn't think the original legislation went far enough. And with the changes that have been made over the last couple months, I'm very happy to add my name as a co-sponsor on this, and I want to thank everybody for their work.
Thank you, Mr. Shea. Any further discussion on the legislation? Seeing none, I'd like to just say thank Mr. Conti, the Public Safety Committee, and the community as well. Oh, Mr. Nani? People, can you please raise your hand? I mean, let's not wait. Just say you want to speak and we'll call you in the order of you raising your hand. Good Nani.
First of all, I'll keep it brief. I really want to thank all the members who advocated for this piece of legislation. I want to thank the members of the public. Last year was rough and we've been through a lot. And I want to thank everyone who produced public comment, sent information to council members talking about what other municipalities and cities are doing. Let's face it, the reason why we were here, particularly to make some of these legislation, some amendments and police reforms, is because Albany, like many cities, has demanded that our local police department be reformed in the wake of George Floyd's murder. These reforms are designed to make it crystal clear that if police officers engage in any type of behavior that's harmful to the residents of our city, there's an independent agency that's going to hold them accountable. There are also mechanisms in place where police officers will be held accountable for their actions. I want to be clear about something. The people of Albany do not serve the police department. The police department is supposed to protect and serve we, the people. And I feel that these reforms is a step in the right direction. These reforms are the step that, working with elected officials, stakeholders, this is what democracy is about. On a personal note, as an African-American who grew up in Brooklyn in the era of stop and frisk, I understand some of the feelings that many of our residents sometimes feel when they encounter law enforcement, where there are some individuals who believe that the justice system is rigged and does not protect them. So I'm just so proud of all my council colleagues, proud of JR, proud of the public for their input on Local Law J. Quite frankly, we must confront racism and hold any individual who believe that they're above the law accountable, particularly when it's towards a certain segment of our population. There is no place in our society for police brutality. And yes, Black lives do matter. On a final note, as a councilman, I've worked with police departments in our city, whether in the summertime, introducing our beat officer to the neighbors, hosting meet and greets with our seniors, walking around the neighborhood with law enforcement, advocating for a contract for our police officers. But these are the reforms that the residents of the city are calling for. And I want to thank all my colleagues. I want to thank our staff for acting on these reforms. And I'm glad to be a co-sponsor. Thank you.
Did I see your hand, Mr. Kimbrough? Yes or no? Okay.
No, I'm good.
Okay, Mrs. Fahey?
Thank you, Mr. President. I too want to commend the Public Safety Committee and all the members of the community who have worked on this legislation. And just to echo some of the, what Richard was saying earlier, that this has been in the works for many years now. Since I've first been on the council, there have been serious discussions about different aspects of this legislation, particularly the subpoena power. So I think we can all take, be reassured that this is something that the community has looked at very carefully. And it's something that has percolated for many, many years. So I, again, commend everybody for their work on this. And I will be co-sponsoring. Thank you.
Mr. Ballerin? Mr. Ballerin?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep.
Thank you. I also want to thank everybody because we have a good group of community members that came out meeting after meeting. I'd like to thank the members of the board, including Mrs. Vivas that's here and who worked on many of these recommendations as well. And we had some very good back and forth. And that's something that we should be proud of. I want to also be very honest with the public because this is a very sensitive topic. And I don't want residents from the public to feel that they were hoodwinked. There are still elements of this legislation that will need, either court to resolve or union contracts to resolve. So I want to be honest with people because I don't want to just make people feel that this is the end. This is just the beginning. And there's still more work to be done, and there's still more communication and conversations and difficult conversations that need to be done as we move forward. But I agree with what my colleagues have said. And I do want to thank everyone who came to the table and had those difficult conversations and stayed. Because sometimes these difficult conversations make it so people, walk away. But people came meeting after meeting, and looked at the different changes, looked at how we can make this a better policy. And I really want to say I appreciate all those people who were there. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, see any other hands? Mr. Igo? You know? Oh, okay. Well, I just like to give Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to say thank you for everyone's effort, and I'm gonna keep my comments short and brief, but this is only the beginning of the reform that the people are looking for. So we're glad to be going in some direction, but as I said, this is just the beginning of what people are looking for. So thank you again to everyone.
Yeah, let me jump it.
Thank
Can
you.
I jump in there?
Go ahead, Mr. Kimbrough.
Yeah, and so I'd like to
Go ahead.
thank everyone. You know, this wasn't an easy process. I always mention that I fall on both sides of this. I'm, Black man, part of the community, and police officer. I mean, once a police officer, pretty much always a police officer. Police officers think this went too far. Community members think it didn't go far enough. As a person that falls on both sides of this issue, not exactly sure. However, I would say to Mr. Anani's point, the police are here to serve the community. So in that equation, we go with what the community wants and needs and desires. It's about building trust. This is not meant to be punitive for the police. It's meant to give and provide transparency and accountability. It's important. It's important to that relationship. And it's been a long time in the making. George Floyd occurred last year, and that kind of set it set the country in motion, really. But and I've had some of my coworkers or my old coworkers that say, why are we dealing with this, or why are we doing this? This isn't Ferguson, we're not Minnesota, mentioning our police department. We have incidents that occur here that parallel incidents that happen elsewhere. And without naming names, there was, a shooting of a young man. There are some questionable things that have occurred. And like the community, I just think that we're not clear on what exactly happened in those instances. It's important that the community trust the police. And I think the CPRB, their legislation will help us get at some of those missing pieces to help build the trust. And honestly, I think on some level, this will remove pressure from some maybe police officers that may not feel they can step up without repercussion. This right here, for lack of a better way of describing it, provides them with cover. I mean, the truth is the truth. And for me, that's always what it's been about, is being truthful in these interactions. And it doesn't always occur that way. And that's why we are where we are. And that's why we're dealing with what we're dealing with. And this is going to help move us forward. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Kimbrough. Mr. Victor Hugo said, there's nothing more powerful than an idea whose time has come. And the idea of giving our civilian review board subpoena power, making an individual agency outside of government has come. And what we've done here, and I just want to put this in context, people, when we talk about people or the police department may feel a certain way, in New York City, they gave their individual civilian complaint review board subpoena power in 1993. 1993. This is 2021. That was under Mayor David. This is 2021 in Albany. So what we're doing here is not something that's unheard of, something that's not already been done. It's just taking this long for us to have a city council that is a legislative body that has, I mean, and I've said it in the past, I said it when we introduced the reforms, when we stood on City Hall steps, and I think it was July, that hot summer day, with activists screaming at us, and we were trying to get them to listen to the reforms we were putting together. And for us to put this reform together, and Mr. Conti accepting to be the sponsor of this because of his knowledge of what happened in the past. And thank you for Mr. Conti for mentioning those council members in the past who were part of putting this first thing together. It's very important, and thank you for that. But it's also very important to say, even though it's monumental in the city of Albany, it took this long. And it's unfortunate it's taken this long. It's unfortunate that it had to be an act, a national act that pushed so we could get to this point. And that's why I said 1993, New York City, they had subpoena power for their civilian complaint review board. So when we move forward, we have to keep that in mind. And when we move forward and we go through this process, I do want the community to be excited. I do want the community to see this as a possibility of building on it. You know, it's going to be trial and error, a lot of things. And I thank Ms. Villegas for commenting about the board might have other ideas. That's great, because that's what we want. We want you to be independent. We want you to have those ideas that are focusing on community driven and community ideas. And that is the purpose of this local law, is to begin and start that process. And so I am glad that this council continues to show that they continue to listen to the citizens of Albany, and they continue to legislate that way. And this is, you know, even though it's 2021, this council members should be proud of themselves. This council continues to show that they are acting as an equal branch of government. And for me, that is the most satisfying thing, to see our council members as a legislative body branch of this government doing the business of the city. I said it, I think in July, to a reporter, that a lot of people don't see and don't feel what this council has accomplished. And I think at the end of this year, after the 4 years, the council will probably be one of the most progressive, one of the most legislative bodies that we've seen in this city. And you guys should be proud of the accomplishments that we've done prior to this and moving forward. So for anyone listening, any in the public, this council is your legislative branch of government, and they are doing a great job, and they're listening to their constituents, and they're working through those issues. And I'm just proud today that we're moving forward and passing this local law, because it shows the work of a council, of a legislative body working together, hearing what the citizens want, and really getting down and doing the work. So this idea has come, and I'd like to thank our council members for putting in the work to make it happen. Thank you. And with that said, can the clerk please call the roll?
Yes, Mr. President, if all members can unmute themselves so that they're able to respond to their names. Anani.
Yes.
Valorant.
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Conti.
Yes.
Doshette.
Yes.
Fahey.
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Farrell.
Yes.
Frederick.
Yes.
Hoey.
Yes.
Igo.
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes.
Kimbrough.
Yes.
Love.
Yes.
O'Brien.
Yes.
Robinson.
Yes.
14 in the affirmative.
Law passes. Continuing on with local laws held, Mr. Conti.
Thank you, Mr. President. I noticed local law M of 2020 as amended. Request its passage and a roll call vote thereon.
Thank you, Mr. Conti. Can the clerk please read the local law?
Local law amending Part 4, the Historic Resources Commission of Article 12, General Provisions of Chapter 42, Departments and Commissions of the Code of the City of Albany in relation to the jurisdiction of the Historic Resources Commission to review emergency actions relating to landmarks or property within historic districts and further providing for a report on emergency demolition and stabilization procedures.
Is there a discussion on this local law? Mr. Conti?
Yep, thank you, Mr. President. And to speak to both this local law and my comments will also include ordinance 219220 later on the agenda, which complements this. They go together. So, you know, one of our greatest assets in the city, I think, is our historic landmarks, our historic districts and buildings. And every time we lose a part of that historic infrastructure, we have a part of our history. We lose a part of our history as well. And it's especially discouraging when that loss comes through an emergency demolition. So what this local law and the accompanying ordinance does, it doesn't solve the problem in a sense. It doesn't eliminate emergency demolitions. But what it seeks to do is to really strengthen the review process for emergency demos and stabilizations. Emergency actions can be a demolition, or it can be a stabilization of a historic structure. And to establish, it also establishes the oversight authority of the Historic Resources Commission, which they clearly didn't have in terms of emergency situations. They weren't always kept in the loop in terms of what happened. It also provides an annual report by the HRC on emergency demos, which will include, could include recommendations on how to prevent future actions. And it sets forth in the code the policy that emergency demos of historic structures within an historic district shall be used as a last resort when no other method will serve to protect occupants or the public from a direct hazard. It also provides that the HRC will receive timely notification of emergency actions and information and findings that are the basis of those actions, including engineering and structural reports, the history of prior code violations, and citations. And it also expands the vacant building registry quarterly reports to include information on the number of vacant buildings within historic districts that are registered, and also the number of emergency actions that are taken within historic districts by historic districts, so that we can look at each individual district and see what the current case might be. This is both of these are consistent with and include elements from the recently adopted historic preservation plan that's being worked on in terms of implementation through the planning department. And, you know, combined with the work that the buildings department is doing in terms of identifying structures at risk and trying to do early intervention, I think it sets the stage for a more comprehensive and active review of emergency actions, and hopefully gets us to the point where we won't have to destroy those buildings, and we can look at how we can preserve and revitalize neighborhoods through the revitalization of our historic structures. I do want to, you know, acknowledge the support, you know, from the planning committee on this. I also want to thank council members Fahey and Doche for co-sponsoring and their support and participation in developing this proposal. I want to acknowledge that through the discussion in the committee, the support from the planning department, especially want to recognize Brad Glass and Aaron Glennon, who is the Historic Preservation Planner within the Planning Department. Want to recognize the involvement and support from Rick LaJoy in the Buildings Department. Also Amy Levine in Corp Counsel's office, who helped in terms of revising some of the language, which has been incorporated into the amended version. And also this was discussed at a couple of meetings of the Historic Resources Commission, where they had, I think, very good discussions in terms of the policy, the process, what they felt they needed also in terms of moving forward. And I do want to thank the support that we received from HRC. So I think this is an important step moving forward and helps us to shed more light and discussion on the whole process and try to get it to the point where we can look at stabilizing and preserving our historic resources rather than demolishing them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Conti. Ms. Fahey?
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to commend Councilmember Conti for bringing this legislation forth. It really did respond from an outcry from the public about our historic buildings and just losing the historic fabric of our city. And, it really was, part of it was a very poor communication between the city and the public. And as far as the actions that were taken, and I say poor communication in that there's not enough communication. We have people with tremendous backgrounds in our saving our historic buildings, and also our city staff is making those, important safety decisions all the time, trying to protect the public when buildings are truly dangerous and place people at risk. But there was tremendous frustration, and this legislation, and also some of the work by the Historic Resources Commission and actions by the public really brought the whole issue to the forefront. And some of the communication that has occurred both on the Historic Resources Commission with our planning department and our buildings and codes department, and the communication that occurred in our committee meetings on this legislation was tremendously productive. So we are going to, there's going to be great improvements here as far as the decisions that are made about our historic buildings that are so at risk. And we'll have recommendations from people with very strong backgrounds in this area and good communication in both directions. So again, I just want to commend everyone involved in as to their work on this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fahey. Is there any discussion on this local? Seeing none, can the clerk call the roll?
Yes, Mr. President. Anani.
Yes.
Halloran.
Yes.
Conti.
Yes.
Doshett.
Yes.
Fahey.
Yes.
Farrell.
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Frederick.
Yes.
Hoey.
Yes.
Igo. It looks like your lips said yes, co-sponsor, please. Johnson.
Yes.
Kimbrough.
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Love.
Yes.
O'Brien.
Yes.
Robinson.
Yes.
For the affirmative.
Thank you. Local law passes. Moving on to reports of any standing committees or committee reports. If think Mr. Kimbrough, do you have a report? I'll go to Ms. Fahey first. Fahey?
Oh, thank you, Mr. President. The Planning Committee met on February 16th to discuss Local M of 2020, passed out with a positive recommendation that we just passed, and ordinance 20, its companion ordinance 219220, all having to do with strengthening oversight of the Historic Resource Commission on demolitions of and stabilizations of our historic buildings. We also met on ordinance 46-12220 regarding technical amendments to the USDO. And the Planning Committee will also be meeting on March 3rd on resolution 182221R. That's a reappointment of Jeffrey Sperry, who is the member and chair of the Parking Authority. And we will be discussing again 46-12220 technical amendments to the USDO. And we will also be doing a general review of this past year's USDO activities. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kimbrough?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. The Public Safety Committee has meetings scheduled for March 2nd, which is tomorrow, and March 8th to have a discussion and receive public comment on the police collaborative final report.
Thank you, Mr. Kimbrough. Ms. Doche?
Thank you, Mr. President. The Housing and Community Development Committee will be meeting on March 9th to begin its review of the process for awarding grants through the Community Development Block Grants and other federal funding. And then we are in the process of rescheduling the joint meeting with the Community Development and Housing Agency to April 7th for us to hold a hearing on anybody who wants to contest their awards or lack thereof through the review process. And then we are asking members of the committee to place a hold on April 15th for a potential additional meeting if one is needed for us to complete our review of the award of grants this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Duche. Ms. Farrell?
Thank you, Mr. President. I did mention this last time, but on this Thursday, March 4th, we'll have a Finance Committee meeting. We'll have an update from the treasurer and the budget director about the city finances, hopefully including, we've discussed with them, including some snapshot of what we're expecting from the state. In addition to the executive budget, the one House Assembly and Senate budgets just came out. So it adds more information, but hopefully also kind of provides a clearer picture, and also to discuss what we're expecting from the federal government. In addition, it's not all that. We also get to discuss ordinances. So we'll be discussing ordinance number 44.122.20 with the closing of Scott Street, and it's a partner ordinance 45.122.20 authorizing the sale of Scott Street. And then finally, resolution number 13.21.21R, which will be consenting to the elimination of one full-time position and the creation of another, which will affect a salary total in the Office of Human Resources. So it should be exciting.
Thank you.
People are interested.
Thank you. Is that all with committee reports? Okay. Continuing on our agenda, going to ordinances introduced. Mr. O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. President. I introduce ordinance 4.31.21 and ask that it be held.
Thank you, sir. Can the clerk please read the ordinance?
An ordinance amending Chapter 371, Water and Waterways, in Part 7, Department of Water and Water Supply of Chapter 42, Departments and Commissions of the Code of the City of Albany in relation to lead pipes.
Thank you, Mr. Kimbrough. I can't hear you.
Yeah, okay, I'm on. The rest of the ordinances are held. No, actually, they're not.
No.
No, for this one, it's going
They're
to
not.
general services,
General
4321.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. O'Brien's is going to general.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
Yep. No problem. And continuing on, now we move to ordinances held. Mr. Conti?
Thank you, Mr. President. I notice ordinance 21.92.20 as amended. Request passage and a roll call vote thereon.
Thank you, Mr. Conti. Can the clerk please read the ordinance?
An ordinance amending Article 9, Building Construction Regulation, and Article 11A, Vacant Building Registry of Part 2, Building Construction of Chapter 133, Building Construction of the Code of the City of Albany in relation to emergency building actions relating to landmarks or property in historic districts.
Discussion on this ordinance? Mr. Conti, I refer, okay. Seeing none, can the clerk, Mr. Conti?
No, I mean, this, as I said, this accompanies the local law that we previously passed.
Thank you, sir. Seeing no further discussions, can the clerk please call the roll?
Anani,
Yes.
Valerie,
Yes.
Conti,
Yes.
Sarchet,
Yes.
Fahey,
Yes.
Farrell,
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Frederick,
Yes.
Hoey,
Yes.
Igo,
Yes. Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Kimbrough,
Yes,
Love,
Yes.
O'Brien,
Yeah.
and Robinson.
Yes.
14 in the affirmative.
Thank you. Ordinance passes. Continuing on. Mr. Kimbrough, now.
ordinances are held. Rest of the ordinances on
Thank
the
you,
agenda are
thank you,
held.
sir. Thank you, sir. Now moving on to considerations of resolutions, introductions of resolutions. Ms. Farrell.
Thank you, Mr. President. I notice resolution number 22.31.21R and ask for its introduction.
Can the clerk please read resolution?
A resolution of the Common Council consenting to the creation of a full-time position, which will affect a salary total for the 2021 budget, Department of General Services.
Thank you. Mr. Kimbrough.
I'm muted. It'll be a referral to finance.
Thank you. Continuing on, Ms. Farrell.
Thank you, Mr. President. I notice resolution 23.31.21R and ask for its introduction.
Thank you. Can the clerk please read the resolution?
A resolution of the Common Council consenting to an adjustment in salary for the 2021 budget, Albany Police Department.
Mr. Kimbrough.
Thank you, Mr. President. Another referral to the Finance Committee.
Thank you. Continuing on with resolutions introduced, Ms. Love.
Thank you, Mr. President. I notice resolution 243121R and ask for its passage.
Thank you, Ms. Love. Can the clerk please read the resolution?
Resolution of the Common Council honoring Victor Wallace Kane's life and legacy and his contributions to the city of Albany.
Any discussion on this resolution? Ms. Love?
I just want to say, I want to say two things. That one, some members of the council got very angry that their name wasn't on the proclamation. It was not my doing. I got a phone call on a Thursday night. They asked for a resolution. I couldn't do a resolution within 2 days. So they asked for a proclamation from either myself or Councilman Robinson, or both. So I did that because I didn't have time to run around and get other signatures. So that's why we did the proclamation, and now we're doing the resolution. But I've been knowing Victor Kane since he was a young boy, and the phenomenal things that he did in the community, and I mean, and all over the city of Albany, was awesome. So this is just a small token. That's all.
Mr. Johnson?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm happy that the resolution was put out there. Vic is more than deserving of it. Just if I could speak again, I was listening to a young man tell me about his time at Livingston at a time when Vic would just handpick a number of kids and take them and buy sneakers for them. And, you just think about how important sneakers are to students. And, I just thought about some of the comments that were shared when people found out that Vic passed away. And, he was there every step of the way. And, just on a personal note, Vic was very supportive to me and all my friends. And, I just feel saddened. I woke up the other day and I just thought that Vic is not here anymore, on top of the many people that we are losing. And I just, every day that I think about some of the accomplishments Vic had and the obstacles that he had ahead against him, he persevered. And I think that at the end of the day, Vic will go down as an overachiever if it was ever one. So thank you to the sponsors of the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Any further discussion on this resolution? Since you're all co-sponsors, we will do this by a voice vote. Mr. Conti, sorry, just lower your hand. Go ahead, Mr. Conti.
Thank you, Mr. President. Actually, Victor was a resident of Park South. When I first met him back in 1997, he was living in Park South. That was also the time when the Common Council seat opened up, and for a time he was actually a candidate for council that year. But I got an opportunity to know Victor. His involvement in the neighborhood. I haven't seen him for a long time, but what I recall is his caring about the neighborhood, his commitment, his involvement, and I want to join other members and really express my condolences for the loss to our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Conti. See, further discussion. Since this is every council member is a co-sponsor of this resolution, we will do it by the voice of all those in favor.
Aye.
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 Resolution. Thank you, council members. Continuing on resolutions introduced, Ms. Farrell.
Thank you, Mr. President. I noticed resolution 25.31.21R and ask for its introduction.
Can the clerk please read the resolution?
A resolution of the Common Council consenting to the elimination of one full-time position and the creation of another, which will affect the salary total for the 2021 budget, Department of Recreation.
Mr. Kimbrough?
Thank you, Mr. President. They'll be referred to the Finance Committee.
Okay, well, and continue on the resolution introduced. You're up, Mr. Kimbrough. The next
Thank
two.
you. Thank you, Mr. President. I noticed resolution 2631, 21R, and ask for its introduction.
Thank you, sir. Can the clerk please read the resolution?
Resolution of the Common Council of the City of Albany in relation to Executive Order 203.
Kimbrough?
Thank you, Mr. President. It'll be referred to Public Safety Committee.
Continue on, Mr. Kimbrough?
Yes, I notice, thank you, Mr. President, resolution 2731, 21R, and ask for its introduction.
Can the clerk please read the resolution?
Resolution of the Common Council of the City of Albany honoring the life and legacy of Warren Adrian Mackey and renaming a part of Livingston Avenue in his honor.
Thank you. Mr. Kimbrough?
Yes, it's going to be a referral to the General Services Committee.
Thank you, sir. And continuing on with resolutions introduced, Mr. Conti? I believe that's what, Mr. Conti?
I think it needs an MC first.
Yeah, yes, thank.
Is it?
Yeah.
I did not hear that. Mr. Kimbrough?
Okay, yeah, thank you, Mr. President. Make a motion to add resolution 283121 by majority consent.
Is there a second on that motion? Oh, Tom, I thought you normally second these. Mr. O'Brien seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. And it's my bad. I should have, when I did notice on the active calendar, I should have known it was an MC. So, but continuing on, Mr. Conti.
Thank you, Mr. President. I offer resolution 283121R and request its reading and passage.
Thank you, Mr. Conti. Can the clerk please read the resolution?
Resolution of the Common Council commemorating and recognizing the 50th anniversary of the statewide march on Albany for gay and lesbian rights.
Uh-oh. Okay, I'm sorry. I hope you guys can see me. My computer froze. Any discussion on this resolution, Mr. Conti?
Thank you, Mr. President, and I appreciate the support tonight. The Stonewall Uprising of 1969 was the spark that gave birth to the political activism of the modern day LGBTQ human rights movement. 1971, 50 years ago, was also the time when we had the introduction of the Sexual Orientation Non-Discrimination Act, the first statewide non-discrimination bill. That was in February of 1971. I'm sorry. That bill didn't actually pass and become law until 2002. But it was also the year of the first march for the first gay and lesbian march for civil rights on a state capitol anywhere in the country. And that happened right here in Albany back on March 14th, 1971. It was a very different time. There were about, there was that political activism and enthusiasm, and people wanted to move forward after Stonewall and other actions. And that spark was here in New York as well. There was anywhere from 3,000 to 5,000 marchers that came to Albany from all corners of the state. Buffalo, Syracuse, down in New York. And even before that, the march began, they began to get threats or, challenges, et cetera. The reports were that there were threatening phone calls, that there were threats about snipers, And there was even reports of buses being advised by the state police not to stop at certain throughway stops on the way up so as not to create tensions and other issues or make people feel uncomfortable. The Albany Police Department actually refused to issue a permit for participants to march to the Capitol for the rally. And so they were forced instead, and a lot of them came from the Unitarian Church up on Washington Avenue, which was the host of a dance the night before. But marchers would have to march single file along the sidewalk down Washington Avenue until they arrived at the rally site in front of the Capitol. And along the way, there were reports of, eggs, rotten eggs being thrown. There was a lot of snow on the ground, snowballs being thrown, things of that nature as well. But the rally took place. It was an historic event. It happened 50 years ago. As I said, March 14th of this year is the exact anniversary. March 14th is Sunday. And so I think it's important. It was a special part in the history of the LGBTQ movement. Albany played a role in it. So this resolution recognizes that event, what happened, the time, and it was really the birth of a lot of activism. There was political activism here in Albany as well as in other parts of the state that all came together and contributed to this. And that's how we eventually had a number of localities adopting human rights ordinances prior to the 2002 statewide law. But it all grew out of the activism from Stonewall. This march, which was, as I said, the first march anywhere in the country, the first statewide march anywhere in the country on a state capitol. So appreciate your support tonight. One of the things that it does ask that we fly the pride flags for the bi, trans, and the rainbow flag from City Hall the anniversary weekend of the march as a commemoration. So appreciate your support for this tonight. And there are a lot of photos, and I've been able to find some, but that really kind of strike a sense as to what it was like back then and how important this march was. Thank you. And
Thank you, Mr.
by the way, for people who don't remember, the person here in the trench coat in the back there, that's Ernie Ray, who was one of the leaders. And I think some people will remember and knew Ernie, who passed away in 1991. I knew him well, learned a lot from him. Ernie was one of the leaders of the march. He worked for Senator Manfred Orenstein at the time, and he was Senator Orenstein's liaison to the gay and lesbian community. Senator Orenstein from Manhattan was the Democratic minority leader, and it was Senator Orenstein from Manhattan and Assemblymember Al Blumenthal from Manhattan who introduced the first gay rights ordinance in 1971, as I say, that eventually passed in 2002. But that's Ernie in the back there in the trench coat. And I know a number of us might remember him and have fond memories of him as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Compton. Any further discussion? Seeing none, can the clerk please call the roll?
Anani,
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Valorn,
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Conti,
Yes.
Doshette,
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Fahey,
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Farrell,
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Frederick,
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Hoey,
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Igo,
Co-sponsor, please.
Johnson,
Yes.
Kimbrough,
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Love,
Yes.
O'Brien,
Yes, co-sponsor.
Robinson,
Yes, co-sponsor.
14 in the affirmative.
resolution passes. That is all for our introduction of resolutions. Mr. Kimbrough?
Thank you, Mr. President. The rest of the resolutions on the agenda are held.
Thank you. Is there any unfinished business or miscellaneous at this time? If not, Mr. Kimbrough,
Motion to adjourn.
there's a second on that motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
It'd be great in a do.
Aye.
Hi.
Meeting adjourned. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
Meeting adjourned.